In here tonight we are going to be making some chicken tacos, a Mexican chicken soup, and we're going to bake up our sourdough breads. So we have our first loaf right here is our specialty loaf, which is a chipotle, a tomato, and Mexican cheese loaf with that's gonna have a little bit of a kick to it. I'm a little excited for this one. It's kind of like a different play on the jalapeno cheddar loaf. Okay, we're gonna give it a nice big score across here. I had these cold proofing in the fridge for like 36 hours. So hopefully they'll get a nice little spring out of them. And let's do our little wheat leaf. Whoa, pop this guy right off. And these are so flimsy if you've ever used them. There we go. And we'll get our little design all the way through here. And then we're going to stick it in our Dutch oven that has been preheating for the last hour at 500 degrees. So very, very hot. So that is our Chipotle, tomato, and Mexican cheese loaf. I'm going to seal it back in, trap in that nice hot air. And now we are going to do our basic loaf. We're going to flip it out. And this is just my traditional, super simple loaf. It's like 500-gram flour, 375 grams water, 100 grams sourdough, and 2 teaspoons of salt. And it like is perfect every time. Do a nice big. And just do some sideways slits down. I'm going to take off my lid here. And we're going to pop it into my Dutch oven. And then we'll put our lid back on, and then we're going to pop these guys in the oven for 20 minutes at 500 degrees. Then we're going to take the lids off and cook them for another 20 minutes at 450. And that typically has always turned out with a perfect loaf for me. I find it gives you the nice, perfect golden crust without being over too much. I like to keep mine a mild kind of golden because if you overcook them too much to where they're like a brown, they don't cook up as well the next day for toast or grilled cheeses. Okay, we've got them in our oven, and now I'm going to set the timer for 20 minutes so I don't forget to come take off the lid, because if you don't take off the lid, it won't get brown. You'll have a very blonde loaf. Okay, let's get started on our soup here. We're going to add about a tablespoon of olive oil to our Dutch oven here. And I'm going to turn my heat on to about a 6 and let it start warming up while we prep our onions. They're really big onions. So this is like equivalent to 2 onions. It's pretty huge. So I'm going to just cut off the side. And we're just going to remove this whole outer shell here because it will be chewy and not good to cook with. So I just take it all off. There we go. And this is we're going to saute these up for our Mexican chicken soup, which we'll be having with some chicken tacos with homemade sourdough discard tortillas. So I'm going to cut this in half, and then we're going to just do kind of a small dice on it, because it's going to be our soup. We don't want them to be too big. There we go. Got our first one. And then we're going to chop through this guy. Took some of that onion with me. Make our slices across. Again, this is a huge onion. So this is really probably equal to 2 smaller or medium-sized onions. And then we're going to toss these in our oil that is warming up and let them start to caramelize. And then we're going to prep the rest of our vegetables. There we go. Let me grab a spatula out because I want to make sure I coat all of my onions in this olive oil first. That way it will get, they can start their caramelization. And just break up any chunks that are sticking together. But we're gonna have a good amount of onions in here because that's gonna add to a really nice fragrant broth, which blends well with kind of the Mexican spices or the Latin spices that we're using. Okay, we have several stalks of celery here. I'm gonna cut off the ends of it. This is probably equal to 5 full stalks. So this is about 6 to 7 of the mini stalks. If you're using the full celery, keep the leaves on it because they're just delicious. And then I'm just gonna cut these down the middle in half so that we don't have any huge celery pieces in our soup. Here we go. And perfect. I think I'm going to save a couple because I had a couple in there tucked up. And then we're going to give a nice dice. We don't want anything super huge because, again, we want to be able to have a whole bunch of different vegetables on each spoonful when we eat it instead of just a big piece of celery. So we've got our celery right here. Now we're going to prep our carrots. We've got 4 carrots here. We're going to give them a nice peel, and then we're going to dice them up as well. Now, since these are full, carrots, you want to peel them off. You can just see, the color difference here between the skin and peel. Leaving that skin on is just going to lead for a more earthy texture or flavor and then a chewy texture. So always peel them, or you can buy the pre-washed baby carrots and that are peeled, so you don't have to do that. But if you're buying them whole like this, make sure you give them a good peel. Here we go. 2 down, 2 to go. And this way the only way you can get by with not peeling is if you really scrub your carrots and scrub almost that whole layer off. So it just makes more sense to peel them. And perfect. Put this last one up. Then we're going to cut the tops and bottoms off. And then we'll have them and chop them up so we have some pieces about the same size as our celery for our Mexican chicken soup. And then we'll start on our chicken for our chicken tacos. There we go. Just going to take this bit out. Looks like that was part of the onion root. Okay. And I'm letting my onions to caramelize up before I add any other vegetables in, because once you start adding vegetables in, it's just really hard for the onions to get that nice caramelization, which really brings out their flavor and just gives you a nice rich complexity to your broth. Okay, so I'm taking my tops and my bottoms off. And we're going to cut these guys in half so that we just don't have any mega-sized carrots. Here we go. Down, and then we'll do a nice kind of coarse chop. And with carrots, I just make sure they're small. You don't want to have huge pieces because they take a lot longer to cook up and to be tender, and you don't want, crunchy carrot in your soup. That's why I like to kind of have them and then make kind of smaller cuts along it. You don't have to worry about them getting mushy because carrots tend to keep their shape for a fairly long time being cooked. There we go. Okay, while our onions are sauteing here, I'm just going to slide this back over here. We're going to start on our chicken, and then I've got that's my skillet over there, so when we're cooking up our tortillas, which we'll do in a little bit. We're going to add about 1.5 tablespoons of olive oil. We're going to put our heat on to, I want to say, a 6, so just like a medium high. And then we're going to put in some minced garlic. About 2 teaspoons of minced garlic. And we're going to let those kind of saute up a little bit. in there for our chicken. And we are going to be using, so in Costco, you could buy rotisserie chicken in bulk. So we're going to use some of this chicken for our soup and some of this for our chicken tacos. But it's pre-cooked. So all you have to do is kind of give it a nice kind of shred when you're putting it in there. But I really like it because it's a great way to have like kind of get you that mock slow cooked chicken feeling or flavors without having to cook a chicken and shred it. So let's see. I'm going to put it right there. Let me stir. There we go. Let's stir this real quick. I want it to sizzle up before I add my chicken into it. I'll turn it a little bit higher. Okay, let me get a bowl. We'll use this one right here. And the only thing with the chicken that you have to make is they do have fairly large pieces. If you're going to do this, if you're getting just a regular rotisserie chicken, you know, you'll shred it yourself by hand. But if you do go the Costco route, which is delicious, they just give you really big pieces. So you need to do a little bit of a hand shred first. There we go. And you could also chop it up with the, you know, a knife. But I find when you do that, sometimes you get really small shredded pieces. So this is where I say just dive in with your hands. Don't be afraid to get dirty. There's not much about cooking that is clean. It's a pretty messy hobby. There we go. And this is going to be, we're going to season it up with some chipotle, cumin, paprika, and taco seasoning to give a nice kind of seasoned chicken for our homemade tortillas. And since it was such a dreary day, I was like, oh, let's do a chicken soup on the side because yesterday or 2 days ago we had 80s and now we have 40s and 50s. This is Tennessee for you. You get that false sense that summer and spring is in bloom, and then it teases you again with freezing cold weather and nasty storms. Okay. Got our chicken shredded. I'm going to do my hands a quick wash. And again, that is pre-cooked chicken, so you don't have to really worry too much about cross-contamination. Let's get our garlic here. It's sizzling nicely. You always want to let it sizzle up first before you put the meat in, because once you do that, the whole pan is going to cool down, and your garlic won't have a chance to really let out its nice flavors. There we go. Give this a nice stir. And then we're going to plop our shredded chicken in over here. And we'll save this bowl for our next batch of chicken. We get some tongs out because I want to coat it, like toss it really quickly in the oil so it's nice and doesn't stick to the bottom of my pan here. There we go. I'm going to turn it down now to about a 5, so it's just cooking over medium heat. I'm going to let it warm up. Our onions, as you can see, are starting to get a nice kind of caramelization to it. We've got a couple of them that are browning up nicely, and they're becoming translucent, which means I'm going to toss in my carrots and celery now. You always want to wait until they start getting that kind of golden color, because once you add in more vegetables, they don't really like caramelize up as nicely, and therefore you miss out on that extra flavor that you get from it. There we go. Give it a nice stir. Okay, we're going to let those saute up, and while we're going to season up our chicken over here now. So we're going to use cumin. We're going to use about a teaspoon of cumin. So I'm just going to shake it about until I kind of see what I eye on it. There we go. And we're going to use a little bit of Chipotle chili pepper, about half a teaspoon, because I don't want it to be too spicy. We're going to use some paprika. It has a very mild flavor, but it will give you that nice red burst, which makes you feel like you've got more more spice in it than you're not. You're going to do about a teaspoon of this. There we go. And then we're going to add in some taco seasoning, just whatever you want. I always buy mine in bulk at Costco. And about a teaspoon of this. This is going to give you kind of an all-around flavor. A little bit of garlic salt. About a teaspoon. It's going to give you your saltiness for your meat. And then I'm going to give this a quick toss. And then we're going to add in some water and a little bit of chicken bouillon to kind of give you that nice stewed flavor. And we're just going to let it sit over low heat in these spices and just simmer for a little bit. But I like to heat it up in the oil, like in the chicken first before adding the broth, because that heat with the oil helps to bring out those flavors a little bit better. Now, lost part of my microphone. Whoop. Okay, so we're going to add about a cup of water in here, and then we're going to add some chicken bouillon. Don't need much because we want to slow cook it, and I can always add a little bit more, but I don't want to drench it because I don't want my chicken to become shredded more. So just a little bit, and we're going to simmer it over low. We're going to add in some chicken bouillon. You don't need much, about a teaspoon, since we didn't add all that much broth into it. Save this because we're going to use that for our soup in just a second. Give this a good stir. And then I'm going to stir my bouillon into it so it can start to season. This is just going to give you that just slow cooked chicken flavor, but done really fast. So that's kind of a nice thing. It gives you as if you spent all day cooking without actually doing all the work. Okay, we're gonna let that simmer now nicely. We've got it on about a 3.5 to a 4. Okay, let's give our things a toss here, and we're gonna chop up some peppers. And then I do have one, so these are all sweet peppers, and then I have one jalapeno pepper. I'm not gonna use all of it because we are spice babies here, but I do like how the jalapeno gives just a slight spiciness to the broth. So we're not going to use it all, just a little bit. So I'm going to go through here my sweet peppers. We're just going to pop off the tops of all of these. Now you could use a bell pepper if you wanted to. It'd probably be about 2 bell peppers. But we just always buy those little snacking sweet peppers. So I always have them on hand. And they're not too bad to cut up, and they don't have a lot of seeds. So that's also kind of nice. So we're just going to kind of slice and dice. And this is going to give you a nice kind of crunch into your soup, and that pepper flavor just adds a nice tone, like another complexity to our broth. Because when I make soups and stuff like that, I really like to have a nice, rich, delicious broth. It's what makes the soup. There we go.
What type of cutting board are you using?
This is just a good old-fashioned plastic cutting board. I have had this cutting board for 20 years now. I mean, yeah, almost 20, maybe not quite 20 years, 16, 17 years. I got it as a Secret Santa gift in college, so it has just made it through the end, but I love it because it's big. It is hard to find really big cutting boards, and it's easy to disinfect and clean. I have a couple wood cutting boards, but I like to use them for just breads or, produce. But anything that I'm going to be cutting like a lot of different things on or meats on, I like to use plastic because I can really disinfect and scrub them. So now I'm just going to do kind of a crazy chop over each one of these just so we can make them all a little bit smaller. So I've got my sweet peppers here. Now here's my spicy guy. Now the spicy part about jalapenos is their seeds. So I'm going to save that one for a little bit, but I want to make sure I don't get any seeds in here because, like I said, we do not handle spice well. So, and that's where you've got a lot of your spice in them. Okay, and then I'm going to really slice these up really small so that nobody gets a huge bite of it. There we go. And then I'm just going to go over them a couple more times. That way their flavors will get really mellow in our broth. And this is really about a teaspoon of it, but it will add a nice spiciness. But because we'll have so many other things in the broth, other things, it won't be super overpowering. But again, it's like you want the smaller ones. Like nothing's worse if you go to like a Mexican restaurant and then you bite in and you have like a huge jalapeno pepper. Like makes you cry. Okay, so we've got our tiny little bit of jalapeno. Toss that in here with our sweet peppers. Now, if you like more spice, definitely add more in there. There we go. We've got our onions sauteing up with our celery and a little bit of carrots and our peppers. Beautiful. Now what I'm going to do is we're going to add some spices in to it, and then we'll chop up our tomatoes and then we'll add our broth and we'll let them simmer and we'll put our chicken in. So we're going to be using some paprika as well, about a teaspoon of paprika. Again, this is going to give you a nice rich color and it has a very subtle flavor to it. It's really delicious. A pinch of Chipotle chili powder, so about a half a teaspoon, because we're going to be putting in some Chipotle bouillon with it as well, so just a little bit. We're going to use about a teaspoon of cumin. This one doesn't want to come out. There we go. A little bit of garlic salt. There we go. And then I'm going to give this a nice stir. And we're going to let the heat kind of really open up those spices and get them nice and aromatic before we add in any liquid. I like to make sure I saute up my spices, especially if I want them to be a part of a broth, because if you add them into the liquid afterwards, they just like to float on the top of your broth. So we're going to let the heat kind of bring out these flavors. And then I'm going to give our chicken over here a nice stir that is simmering up in those lovely juices. And again, low and slow on this, guys. Beautiful. Okay. We're going to add a little bit of garlic in here as well. Just a teensy bit. About a teaspoon. Give it a good stir for our chicken, Mexican chicken soup. So we've got all of our lovely kind of vegetables right here for it. And I like to make sure they sauteed up so they can bring out a really lovely flavor. Beautiful. So we got 4 fresh tomatoes here that we are going to slice up, but I hear our bread calling us, so we're going to let those saute while we take the lids off of our sourdough. Let me just make room because I do like to have a place to put them when I take them out. So here is where we're going to take the lid off, and then we're going to bake them the rest at 450 for 20 minutes. Let's take this lid off. So this is our traditional loaf. It has a lovely pop there, you can see. Beautiful. That's why you do that big expansion score across the middle, because that's what makes it pop. And then here's our round loaf, which is our Chipotle Mexican cheese and tomato, which will go great with our soup tonight. We have them in here. And so now what I'm going to do is I am going to bring my oven temperature down to 450. And then we're going to bake it for another 20 minutes. There we go. If I don't set my timer, I forget about it. So I'm always making sure I set my timer. I'm going to turn our chicken down here nice and slow. Let's give this a quick stir. And then we're going to add in our tomatoes and some chicken bouillon and water and Chipotle bouillon. Let that simmer. And then we're going to do our tortillas. Now for our tomatoes, you don't have to do a super small dice on them because they will kind of just disintegrate away into our broth, which is nice because they're going to give a great tomato flavor. And you'll have little chunks of tomato left, but most of that liquid in the tomato comes out. If your knife slips on your tomato skin, just sharpen it up. You want to have a nice sharp knife when cooking. You're less likely to cut yourself. So my knife set that I got when I was married, we got just like a basic Wusthof set, and it came with a honing steel. So I just sharpen it up I want to say about like every 2 weeks I sharpen it up. But they've been going strong. You know, we've had them for a very long time. 16, 17 years, same knife set. I figure that's pretty good. I think you get. Oh, yes. We always make a joke. My mom has this bread knife that she got from when she got married in, I want to say like 1973. And it was serrated at one point, but it has been used so long that the serrated tips have just gone smooth. So, I mean, that knife is what, 50, 60 years old, or, and it's still going. It is worthless. It's really like a butter knife now, a butter sword, if I would say, because it can't cut through any bread. But it has sentimental value. So it, of course, comes out anytime anybody needs to, cut the bread. And it's more like, let me hack the bread. She probably needs to sharpen that one up. There we go. We're going to add our tomatoes in. We're going to give it a nice stir. And the liquid, you want to make sure you scrape the bottom of your pan off because those are some of your spices will get stuck down there. And these tomatoes will just really help it kind of hydrate up those spices and bring them out. It looks delicious. Now, beautiful. We're going to add in some water and chicken bouillon and a little bit of smoky chipotle bouillon into our soup. So that was about 3 cups. I'm going to use a little bit more to have about 4 cups. There we go. We're going to let those simmer up. And you're going to add a big heaping spoon of chicken bouillon. There we go. And then I'm going to add a nice spoonful of smoky chipotle bouillon. Now this stuff packs a punch, so you don't need much, just about a teaspoon, but it is delicious. It gives a great flavored broth to it. It has like a tomato base in it with chipotle chili peppers. Okay, we're going to let this simmer. Then we'll add some corn, some white beans, and chicken to it. And our soup will be done in a little while. We're just got to let it simmer now. But I like to add the chicken in towards the end because if you add it in too soon, it will shred apart. And then once this comes to a boil, we'll add our corn and beans in. Okay, we've got this slow cooking chicken over here, which is great. So I'm going to turn this off, and then I'm going to put my warming center on and keep it nice and warm over there because we are going to do our tortillas. So I finally broke down and bought myself a tortilla press because if anyone else has seen any of my previous videos where I have rolled out my tortillas, I can only make square tortillas. So we'll see if this helps. So this is my sourdough discard tortilla. We made it during our morning stream when we were making waffles. It's a great way to use up some sourdough discard. About a cup of it goes in there with a 1/2 cup of oil, about 3 1/3 cup of flour, and a teaspoon or so of salt. 2 teaspoons, I believe. And it is super easy, malleable dough to make. So with the tortilla press, again, I just got this in the mail, so if it doesn't work out, don't blame me. We're going to put our ball right here. And they say put it between 2 pieces here. I'm going to start warming up my skillet here because once this is nice and warm, we can toast it up and hopefully make sure it's in the middle. we can have nice flat tortillas. And you just push it down. Let's see if this works. Okay. Pretty close. I think we need to have a slightly smaller thing. There we go. But look, it actually made it pretty flat. You know, you sit there and you wonder, I'm like, does it really work? This is going to work now. Perfect. And then we just push it, push it, push it, push it, push it. It's like really hard. There we go. Oh, perfect. Look at this, guys. This beautiful, thin tortilla. Perfect. Okay, once we've got that nice and warm, so we'll just start making a couple of these. And let me grab something. I want them a little bit, they got pressed out nicely. So I wonder if I do a nice little after. Look at that. Because I noticed when I did it, they shrank up some. Perfect. Hey, it's round at least. Look at that. We're gonna let these toast up. Let's get our ball. I bet you if I help flatten it out some more. We'll put our tortilla. It's like a nice pulley. There we go. Oh, look, much easier. Now we figured out the trick. Pretty neat. A little simple mechanics there. There we go. I will say they get you about 90% there. Not bad. Okay, we got this cooking up. Let's give. I'm going to turn up my heat over here. I'm going to let it get nice and bubbly. But while we're doing that, let's prep our avocado or guacamole, because you got to have guacamoles when you make chicken tacos. So we're going to just slice down. There we go. And they're here. I do a really simple guacamole. I just do garlic, salt, fresh lime juice, and avocado. And it's just great. Sometimes if I'm feeling bougie, I'll add in some, diced up peppers and onions. But sometimes the simplicity of it is just what you need. We're going to go here. I'm going to kind of peel off this avocado skin. There we go. Kind of the best way to get your pretty avocado there. Perfect. Just kind of bends it out. And if they're nice and ripe, they should fall right off the skin. If they're underripe, they're going to cling to it a bit more. And, if they're overripe, they'll be brown and nasty.
What's the strangest guacamole you've seen?
The strangest guacamole I've seen, my sister-in-law made it. She put pomegranate seeds in it, and she tried to convince everybody that they tasted just like tomatoes. They did not taste like tomatoes. It was gross. To me, I like pomegranates, just not in my guacamole. That was a little weird for me. Now, the best guacamole I ever had, we were on a cruise in this winter, and we were at a resort in Mexico. And I don't know if it was just because they had the freshest avocados or whatnot, but their guacamole, they made it right at the table next to us. So good, so good. And I watched it, and then I tried to emulate it at home, but I think it was because their avocados were so fresh. It was just so creamy and delicious. Let me grab a big fork here. I always like to find the squishiest lime, because that one is going to have the most juice in it. You want like thin skin and nice and squishy. I'm going to put our lime juice in here. And you got to use fresh lime juice. You can't use like that true lime, like the liquid lime stuff. It's got to be fresh. There we go. And then I will say I like cilantro in it, but half my family doesn't. So we always just kind of keep the cilantro out. But I like cilantro. If you've got fresh cilantro that's been picked right away, that can add a really good flavor to it. Here we go. And then we're going to add in some garlic salt. Of course, got to have the garlic salt. And then I just use my fork to mash it. I have one of those like special, I think they're called like a moqueta or something like that, made out of volcanic stone. And it weighs like 20 pounds. And I have one, and it's just such a pain to clean that I rarely use it. Yeah, well, no, it's called. They have a special name for it, and I'm pretty sure it's called a moqueta or mojeta. Well, I think it has a J in it, mojeta or something like that. And it's meant for just making guacamole. So I mean, you got to be pretty dedicated to your guacamole game to have one of those. And it's heavy as crazy, but it's since volcanic rock is very porous, it gets really, really dirty and it's hard to clean. So I just never use it.
Somebody spelled it out. I can't say that. If it was German, I got you. There's a J.
I knew there was a J in it. See, it's one of those things where I know it. I just haven't. I have to hear somebody say it, and once I've heard somebody say it, then I've got you. I can do it. Okay, we've got our delicious guacamole. There's the preschool teacher in me. There's a song about guacamole. I will spare you from my singing because I'm terrible, but every time I make it, I have to sing that in my head. It's a ridiculous song. Okay, I'm going to turn my skillet down to about a 3, but we've got our first beautiful tortilla up. We've got the lovely little bubbling on it, which is what we want. Here we've got our soup, nice and got a bubble to it, so a boil on it. We're going to add a little bit of corn to it because I always wait till it gets nice and hot before I put the corn in because that really brings down the soup temperature. We're going to add about a cup of corn to our Mexican chicken soup. And it gives you those nice little flavors. You use chipotle in here, cumin, chili powder, just lots of different yummy flavors. And then we're going to use some white beans. I love white beans for this because they don't overpower the soup versus using like a pinto or kidney because I think those are very strong flavored beans. These are mild and you don't notice them, which I think is always great for my kids because if they know a bean is in there, then they're like, what are you trying to do to me? There we go. Always make sure you rinse your canned beans because they're in the liquid that they canned in turns very starchy from the beans. And you don't want that in there because it will just kind of ruin the flavors of your soup. There we go. Stir that up. Let's see how this guy is. Beautiful. And now we're going to shred up our chicken that we're going to add into our soup. And we have our chicken for our tacos. So it's a great way to use both sets of our chicken up here. I'm going to chop it up a little bit smaller because it is a soup, so I don't want to have huge pieces of chicken in it. And this is just your good old Costco rotisserie chicken that you can buy pre-shredded. There we go. And I'm hoping I didn't make my soup too high. We're getting on there. I always like to test things to the limit. Here's what we're going to do. I always am like, ooh, do I go up with a slightly larger pot? I never do. We'll just reserve a little broth out here for later. There we go. Because we want the chicken in there. Get the nice flavor. And if my kids, they love to pick out all the chicken when they're eating it versus getting all the vegetables in it. So then it's like, oh, what happened to all the meat in your soup? There we go. Beautiful. Now we're going to let that come up to a nice little simmer, but I'm going to turn it down nice and low so it can simmer on low, because again, you don't want to cook the chicken too high, because when you do that, it will just cause the like to fall apart and get shredded. Let's get our next tortilla. Put this on. Give it a little press. I will say this does make it nice and round. Perfect. It's quite heavy. It's a cast iron, but I think you need to have that nice little weight behind it. Beautiful. Look at that, our second tortilla up. I'm going to roll this a little bit thinner just because I like mine a little bit thinner. Perfect. And this dough, because it has that sourdough discard in it, and we let it kind of sit, it has a nice little pull. Now, corn tortillas won't have as much elasticity to it because it doesn't, of course, have the gluten in it. So with the flour, you need a little extra love on it. But I am a fan of flour tortillas. Now, corn tortillas that are made fresh are delicious, but I find when you buy the store-bought corn tortillas, they just fall apart when you're cooking them. Even if you toast them up on your skillet like you're supposed to, I always have to double them up, and they're just so dry. But freshly made corn tortillas, now that, I have to do that sometimes because those are delicious. Here we go. Beautiful. And you'll just do a simple little roll out. And this is this is actually a fondant roller if you're into baking cakes, because you don't need quite as much heft behind that when you're doing cakes. Here we go. Perfect. So that will be ready. Let's cut up our pineapple. Give my knife a little rinse here. So I've been needing to cut this pineapple up, and I always love pineapple with Mexican food. I just feel like it goes well. Any citrus fruit, tropical fruit with Mexican food just is perfect. That one's dirty, so let's get a nice fresh bowl. Now, the trick for getting a good pineapple is you got to wait until it grows gold. Most of the time when you buy it, you see the top is dark green. That was what my pineapple looked when I first got it. Now you can see the gold coming up. That knows it's going to be nice and ripe and ready. Now, the whole thing won't go gold. If you wait for the whole thing to go gold, your bottom half will be rotten before your top half is. Beautiful, but you can see just that lovely rich golden color in there. And then I always cut the tops and the bottom so I have this nice flat surface to work with. We're going to slice all the way down. We're going to cut it into fourths, and this is going to allow us to core it really easily. So to take the core out, you're just going to literally run it along, and you've got the core off. Easy. And then what I do is I cut it down into eighths again, and we're going to go just along there. You remove that whole skin, and you see how close you can get to it? You get to save a lot more pineapple than if you buy it at the store. That is one thing. Call me stingy or frugal, but I will not buy pineapple or fresh fruit. I have to cut it up myself because it is so much money wasted for them to cut it up. And you don't even know if it's going to be good if they cut it up, because sometimes they cut their pineapple up too soon, and then it's that hard, bitter pineapple. So we'll take this core right out. Pretty easy. Let's see if our tortilla needs flipping. Beautiful. And I just flip it with my fingers because I'm using a griddle pan, which has no edge on it. It has a very shallow lip. So it's really easy for me to just drag it and flip it because it's not very hot. And we didn't use the recipe for our tortillas have a lot of oil in it, so you don't need to use any extra on the pan. Okay. Let's chop this up, and then our bread is done. So let's pull that out. Let me grab a trivet for it. Are these hot? Here. We've got to be doing our little moving here. I'm going to put that bread on there because it will be really hot. But they're going to be gorgeous. Look at them. You can see they've got a lovely, beautiful golden crust on here. This is our Chipotle chili and Mexican cheese. And then we're going to grab our regular sourdough loaf. Has a beautiful burst when we cut it open when we did our expansion score on it. And then I'm going to just I always take them out right away so that they stop cooking. So that's our traditional loaf. And move this over here. And this is going to be our Chipotle chili loaf. It has a beautiful crust on it. But look how gorgeous they are. This was with Mexican cheese, sun-dried tomatoes, and Chipotle seasoning. And this is our basic loaf. And they always just turn out perfect every single time. Okay, let me get these guys right out of the way. They're very hot. So they take up a lot of space too. So I want to clear them out so I can do my tortillas.
What state are you in?
We are in Tennessee. So we just live south of Nashville. Got that one done. Nice and hot. Perfect. Got this next one on there. Gonna roll these guys out because we are almost down to the finish line. Perfect. And with sourdough bread, I might have enough time because I like to let them sit for about 10 minutes before I cut them open, because you don't want to cut them open right away because you want the steam to escape naturally so you get it cooked all the way through and you don't have a kind of doughy, gummy dough. But I think when we finish with everything, I should be able to cut one open, and you guys can see the beautiful crumb on it. There we go. Do a nice roll here. Get this guy nice and flat. And we'll be ready for the next one. There we go. Okay, let's finish up our pineapple. And flying away. And again, just go right along the kind of the crust of there. Remove it. If you try to go any closer, what happens is on the pineapple, I'll show it when I pull it up. If you cut any closer, you see these little nudges? They have like little seeds indents. You can kind of see one right here. So if you cut too close to the skin, you're going to have a lot of that skin in it. So I always make sure it's just a little, if you leave just that much amount on there, you're going to have a nice spear without any of those little seed nodules. And if you leave those seed nodules on, your pineapple will go brown really fast because it naturally oxidizes them and the sugars just turn it brown, like you know how when you leave a banana or an apple out, they go brown. So you want to make sure you don't leave those little seeds on there because they turn your pineapple brown really fast, which doesn't make it taste bad. It's just not visually appealing. And if you have kids, apparently if anything looks off, they won't touch it. There we go. And before we cut that last spear up, let's flip this. There we go. And we're gonna go right down here. Perfect. Okay. Let me give our soup a nice stir. And this is our Mexican chicken soup. We put peppers, tomatoes, onions, carrots, celery in there, white beans, as well as chili peppers, chipotle seasonings, cumin. And then here we've got our meat. I have it on my warming burner. This is our Mexican chicken that we use the other part of our rotisserie chicken with. But we've kind of slow cooked it in a broth to give you that like long day simmer. And bring this right up. I'm going to wash my hands. They're a bit sticky from the pineapple. And you know what? We might actually start serving up. Show you how we're going to eat the soup and our tacos while we cook up the last bit of tortillas. Let's see how this one is faring. Just about. Let me get a plate, our bowl, and a spoon. Okay. Let's start with got our tortilla. I'm gonna get some cheese ready and sour cream because of course you gotta have cheese and sour cream on it. I'm using just cheddar cheese because my kids love cheddar cheese, but if you wanted to use like the cojita, which is that Mexican fresh cheese, you crumble it on there and it's absolutely delicious. Okay, so we've got our nice tortilla here. I'm gonna take our shredded chicken that we've had seasoned in some nice little chili and chipotle seasoning cumin. We're going to do a good serving of guacamole. There you go. And then, of course, I like a nice little dollop of sour cream and some cheese. So here's our taco. And now let's do our soup. Hopefully it doesn't. So this is our kind of our Mexican chicken soup. And we have this. And then I love to garnish it with put a little bit of cheese on there so it melts into it, gives you that nice rich flavor. And then, of course, a dollop of sour cream and a little bit of guacamole on top too. And we have our delicious chicken tacos with our Mexican chicken soup. So we made our homemade tortillas using our sourdough discard, and we slow cooked our chicken and some nice seasonings, whipped up some guacamole, and made our delicious Mexican chicken soup for an overall great dinner tonight that's made in like 30-40 minutes. Pretty fast, pretty quick to whip it up. And then, of course, we will also be having our sourdough bread with it, and this is cooled off just enough. So I know a lot of people like to see the peek inside of it. So we're going to cut open this guy, and you guys.
What? Just pointed out, I just saw it. You put the spoon and fork in the cheese bag.
I totally did. Let me get that, a little bit of that cheese out. That is my brain working here. You know what? I have 5 kids. So you guys just have to have, a little patience with me. They kind of, wear you out a little bit. I love them to death. But, we have a 15-year-old, a 13-year-old, a 9-year-old. And then apparently we decided to start all over after 6 years where our kids were great in kindergarten. Everyone is in grade school. Then we had Teddy. Love my sweet, innocent, perfect little Teddy. He's such a little angel, who's 3. And then we have Jack. And I love Jack, but I swear to God, he's going to be the death of me. Apparently, he's just how I was, just little like hellraiser, purposefully naughty, looks at you to do naughty things. He took a bowl of popcorn today and then threw it all over our living room and then stepped on it and danced with it. And so I've got some gray hairs coming in for it. But yes, that's how my brain works because it's fried. Let's get this tortilla on, and then I'm going to cut into our sourdough loaf so you guys can see it because I know lots of people like to look inside. So we'll do a nice crumb reveal. Look at that beautiful crumb. Isn't it gorgeous? See, we've got the nice little even bubbles all the way throughout. That is from your lamination process. You got to make sure you do a good lamination. If you don't, you're just going to have big bubbles in it. So I always make sure you've got to really stretch it out and do that. And that is your key to having just perfect crumb on your sourdough. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, show you what we're making for my family, and hopefully don't go too crazy in the process. Again, thanks so much for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe.